Welcome back, Red Star Rebels. It's January 31st, 2023, and this is podcast episode number 1 of our 3rd season. We are, of course, Red Star Report. I'm Hal G. Lohr, and this is Voices for the California Nation. It's no secret that the nation state of California wants to be on the front line in the global fight against climate change, with plans for California to move away from gas-powered cars and fossil fuels in general by 2035. Unfortunately, it's also no secret that both major parties in the U.S. federal government are desperately looking for least we can get away with solutions that only make it look like America is actually doing something to prevent global extinction. A combination of never-ending debates and symbolic gestures designed for mass media sound bites that won't upset the corporate donors. Basically, the same rhetoric of failure tactics American federal politicians have used on every other major public issue, from guns to abortion, for the last 50 years. But as part of California's ongoing efforts to fight climate change, and following more than a decade of complaints from Los Angeles residents that pollution from local wells has been affecting their health, the Los Angeles City Council voted unanimously last year for a city ordinance banning new oil and gas drilling and to phase out existing wells within Los Angeles city limits over the next 2 decades. Then, on January 10th, 2023, an LA oil company and member of the California Independent Petroleum Association, remember that name, a company called Warren Resources sued the city of Los Angeles, seeking to block the LA ordinance from taking effect. Nothing new there. In fact, this is the lather, rinse, repeat of similar lawsuits filed in 2016, 2017, 2018, by members of the same California Independent Petroleum Association, all filed after California's state and city of Los Angeles oil drilling restrictions were enacted to end long-standing American oil company practices of racially targeting vulnerable communities. Namely, a policy of placing oil wells in poor and disproportionately Black and Latino neighborhoods. The California Independent Petroleum Association, which unsurprisingly is an Orwellian lobby association of state and out-of-state fossil fuel company interests, has a history of filing lawsuits against cities like Los Angeles. Classic examples of retaliatory deep pockets lawsuits filed to intimidate the state, city, and or the general public in violation of existing California state law. Ironically, in their lawsuit, Warren Resources actually claims that shutting down their drilling and fracking operations puts the city and taxpayers at a huge financial liability. They claim, with a straight face I might add, that the Los Angeles City Council, after years of research, failed to study the environmental impacts of actually ending oil production, as though a leave-it-in-the-ground cure could somehow be worse than the frack and extract disease. But Warren Resources filed their grievance lawsuit saying the LA ordinance will effectively shut down its operations, because Warren Resources is dedicated to oil and gas extraction solely in the Los Angeles area, where it operates 244 wells and produces about 1,800 barrels of oil a day, according to their court filings. But there's a bit here to unpack. Los Angeles 100 years ago was a booming oil town with thousands of oil wells and a small population. But today, much of its oil fields are played out, and LA alone is a city of 4 million people. What a difference a century makes. In 2023, according to the city controller's office, there are only about 780 active and 290 idle and or non-operational wells left in Los Angeles, with more oil wells just outside LA proper in Carson, Inglewood, and Long Beach. The simple truth is that the time when the city of Los Angeles was a major oil-producing town is already becoming part of LA's shady, racially divisive, and environmentally irresponsible past. A past that most modern Angelenos will be happy to see relegated to the dustbin of history. A simple truth made absolutely clear by a study in 2021 by research from the University of Southern California that not only found that people living near oil wells in Los Angeles neighborhoods reported significantly higher rates of wheezing, eye and nose irritation, sore throat, and dizziness than neighbors living further away, but also, following in long-standing American oil company tradition, those communities where oil wells are still active are also still predominantly located in non-white communities, according to the 2020 census. Research that prompted California lawmakers to ban new drilling within 3,200 feet of schools, houses, and community sites in 2022. But it will probably come as no surprise that fossil fuel companies like Warren Resources and fossil fuel groups like the California Independent Petroleum Association are trying to get referendums on the 2024 ballot to block that law. Bringing up the question for California voters: what is more important? Racial justice, environmental responsibility, and public health in California, or the profit margins of the American fossil fuel industry? American fossil fuel companies like Warren Resources, who continually claim to be local California companies, even though according to Warren Resources' own website, basically all of their company officers have phone numbers with Texas area codes. Funny. American oil companies that don't think twice before they file lawsuits to continue fracking out every last drop of profit at California's expense, even in the face of escalating environmental disasters, as they continue the great American tradition of purposely targeting struggling minority communities. I mean, come on. That's basically shameless capitalistic Americana cartoon quality bad guy stuff right there. The Los Angeles City Council, in this case, actually got it right for once and voted last year to ban new oil and gas drilling for good reason. They actually put the people and the planet over profit and population. Well done. Hopefully, California courts will see the good for the public in this and do the same thing. This is Voices for the California Nation. For our first edition of Activism in Action for Season 3, Shankar Singham has a warning and some advice for 2023 in his new segment about America's fascist militias like the Proudboys, the Oath Keepers, and Patriot Front, to name just a few. Today's political landscape is not a civil or safe space. Despite what you may hear on Fox News, CNN, or MSNBC, the January 6, 2020 D.C. riot was just a beer hall putsch moment for American fascism, not the end. A fact confirmed by the January 6th Commission in their business-as-usual 2-year-long federal failure to actually prosecute the treasonous ringleaders of an attempted coup anywhere but in the fleeting court of public opinion. Let's go to Shankar.
Good evening, folks, and welcome to another episode of Activism in Action. It is the first episode of Season 3, 2023. Let's take a look back at the past couple of years, shall we, and where at the state of the United States and where we have gone, right down that slippery slope of fascism, slowly but surely, with not only the Democrats dragging us all along, but the Republicans leading the way. And none of it more obvious. We've seen more violence towards women and minorities. It has exploded, folks. You have armed militias trying to assassinate the vice president, the Speaker of the House, all led by a Republican president of the United States. Militias have tried to murder the Democrat governor of Michigan. These white supremacist groups are trying to blow up power substations and power grids from Washington, D.C. all the way to the Carolinas in some sort of strategy to take out our energy resources. And they've embedded themselves in the fabric of the country, in our government, folks, in DHS, in the military, in law enforcement. They're coordinating with fascists overseas. Folks, I don't know how else more obvious that this could be, that this is an actual threat for us not to start doing more about it. I don't know how else to frame it. I don't know what else to say, but you need to start paying attention, and we need to start fighting back, folks. Fighting back, folks, because they will win. It doesn't matter what the voting poll says. It doesn't matter what the Electoral College says. They are going to take it. They are going to take it. Look at Carrie Lake. She's fighting her losing election. You have this guy here in New Mexico, Solomon Pena, who unsuccessfully ran for the state house seat in New Mexico as a Republican last November, was arrested Monday in Albuquerque for allegedly paying 4 men to shoot 4 elected officials in their homes, police said. They said Pena paid $500 and that he took part in one of the shootings himself. The criminal complaint against Pena includes chilling details. In one case, bullets tore through the walls of a 10-year-old girl's bedroom as she slept. Just before the attack, police allege Pena had urged gunmen to aim lower when they shot at the politician's house. Charges against Pena, whom police call the mastermind behind the string of attacks, include conspiracy to commit a felony, shooting at an occupied dwelling, shooting from a vehicle. He was booked into Albuquerque Metropolitan Detention Center late Monday. There is no losing from them. They have the only way they know how to win is through violence. They don't have logic. They don't have a reason. They don't have sound policy. The only way they're going to control the general public, the government, is through sheer and utter violence. And we can see that with the Proud Boys. They have pivoted their strategy, folks. The Proud Boys, we've all known them. They wear the Fred Perry shirts in yellow and black. They're targeting LGBTQ community now. From GLAAD, 2022 news reports cited incidents targeting drag events in 47 U.S. states. That's how coordinated they are. With the exclusion of South Dakota, Rhode Island, West Virginia, and Washington, D.C. It is possible that incidents did occur in those areas, but they did not receive media coverage. The states with the highest number of drag events targeted by protests and threats in 2022 include Texas had 20, North Carolina 10, Illinois 8, Tennessee 6, California 6, Georgia 5. Now, with many of these incidences were reported in smaller cities and towns in South and Midwest, a number also took place in areas with higher LGBTQ populations and LGBTQ inclusive communities. New York saw 4 protest incidences, 3 of which took place in New York City. Now, here in Southern California, we don't really have a Proud Boy problem anymore, really. And I'm going to talk more about that a little bit later on how you can also alleviate that problem. Some of the more violent or threatening instances took place in Eugene, Oregon, San Francisco suburbs, and Oklahoma's capital, Tulsa. Events were also targeted in large cities, including New York, Philadelphia, Memphis, Dallas, Cleveland, Las Vegas, and Phoenix. So, where are they getting their marching orders from? A number of the drag events targeted by threats and protests in person were first targeted by right-wing media outlets like Fox News, The Daily Wire, and social media accounts like Libs Off TikTok. These outlets and accounts often misrepresented what would occur at upcoming drag events, spinning them as harmful for children, because that's all they have, folks. The children. Don't expose the children to CRT. Don't expose the children to LGBTQ. They're trying to indoctrinate. They're trying to molest the little kids, right? They're trying to teach your kids to be racist against white people. That's all they have are those fears, folks. That's it. You know it. I know it. But that is their justification. The kids are their justification for the violence. And if it's for the kids, they're going to get away with it. Media Matters reports from June found that Fox News had devoted more hours to targeting drag queens and transgender people than to coverage of the January 6th insurrection hearings. Of course, they wouldn't cover that, the hearings. Here's a list of the incidences. A number of incidents involved violence or weapons. Extremist groups like the Proud Boys, Patriot Front, and local white supremacist chapters were involved in several incidents. So here we go. Here's a list. In Tulsa, Oklahoma, this October, security video captured a person smashing the windows of a donut shop before lighting a Molotov cocktail and firebombing the storefront. That would be Patriot Front. A bomb threat was emailed to a local news station in South Carolina, claiming several bombs were planted at a restaurant hosting a drag brunch and threatening to kill performers and attendees. That was a local white supremacist group. About 50 members of the Proud Boys extremist group, armed with long guns and helmets, full face masks, and flak jackets, protested Drag Story Hour at a church in Ohio. Neo-Nazis with swastikas and transphobic signs at a Pflugerville, Texas restaurant hosting a drag brunch. Armed protesters raising hands in Nazi salutes disrupt a drag bingo fundraiser in Katy, Texas. Proud Boys disrupt multiple LGBTQ inclusive events in Arlington, Texas, blocking the sidewalk, falsely claiming attendees were pedophiles. This list is endless, folks. Extremist protesters with a history of recording and photographing children without consent protest drag performances at a restaurant in Houston. San Antonio concert venue cancels upcoming drag show for the year, citing threats against performers and staff. In Eugene, Oregon, this October, protesters carried semi-automatic rifles and threw rocks and smoke bombs. That was Proud Boys. In the Chicago suburb of Downers Grove, Illinois, in September, a public library canceled a drag bingo event after receiving a threatening letter that included a bullet and the phrase, "more to come." That's a white supremacist group. In Memphis, Tennessee, in September, local leaders said Proud Boys were among the armed protesters that showed up to a drag event at the Museum of Science and Industry, forcing the event's last-minute cancellation. In Sparks, Nevada, in June, children at the town library ran for safety when a Proud Boy protester was carrying a firearm. In Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, in June, police arrested 31 Patriot Front members who had traveled from 10 different states armed with riot gear and smoke grenades to protest a pride event that had been targeted by libs off of TikTok online. Folks, this is happening across the United States. And this is activism in action. So earlier I mentioned we don't have a Proud Boy problem here in SoCal, not really at least. I'm sure they do exist here, but they're not out disrupting our lives as they have been disrupting the rest of the United States. US, I'm going to do one good solid for you. Shoot us an email, subscribe to the channel, Red Star Report. Go check out the website. And if you subscribe and shoot us an email about your Proud Boy problem, if you have a Proud Boy problem, infestation in your neighborhood, shoot us an email, tell us about it. We are going to tell you how to alleviate that situation, folks. Non-violently, all perfectly legal, and it will utterly destroy their lives. I mean, there are perfect legal ways of going about activizing besides walking down the street and marching down the street. Here is a solid strategy. Through a strategy of letter writing campaigns, public humiliation, basically, if you're interested into how to alleviate your community of any Proud Boy infestation, please shoot us an email. We can instruct you on how to target your group of Proud Boys. And through a series of emails and letter writing campaigns and even infiltration, if you have a large group, you can get these individuals fired or at least from their jobs or at least embarrassed from their community, from their families, from their relatives, or ostracized from them. It's quite a bit of work, I assure you, but the result will not only be rewarding for your community, it will also provide a great laugh around the drum circle, if you know what I mean. Let me show you an example of a letter writing campaign. Now, we found this Proud Boy, and he was a bit of a tussle. He liked to tussle on the street. There's a copy of the letter there up on the screen. And it's a basic letter. It just says, It is unfortunate. I'm trying not to say anybody's name on this one. This was a used letter. It is unfortunate to inform you this message involves your fellow employee. A letter such as this may stem from the subject of a letter being a member of an extremist hate group, chatting online in support of hate groups, or attacking minorities of outspoken voices from our community. Currently, one of the largest hate groups, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center, are known as the Proudboys. The Southern Poverty Law Center lists the Proudboys is in its directory of hate groups alongside other such groups as Rise Against and America First. They believe in the superiority of what they deem European culture, blah, 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 blah. Currently, it is unclear what said employees' true affiliation with the Proud Boys is, but here is recorded actions of him and as posts of as him as an avid MAGA Trump supporter. Here's a link to the video of so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. Here's a post of his Facebook, blah, blah, blah. We recommend taking immediate action against said employee, lest we inform the press of his employment here at your facility. We will continue to monitor Mr. So-and-so, blah, blah, blah. You get the point. An employer receives a letter like this, and believe me, someone's getting canned that day. It is a highly effective weapon, nonviolent, all true, all perfectly legal. So shoot us an email, give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and this is not something that we're going to write down and show you or even do a video on. This is mano a mano. You're going to talk to me on the phone, and I'm going to explain to you how, or on video, on Zoom, whatever it is, and explain to you how you go about dismantling your local Proudboy chapter one by one. Okay? Activism in action. Thank you once again, Hal. That's all I've got. Back to you.
Thank you, Shankar. Red Star Rebels Civil War 2.0 goodies for your consideration. More information about current peaceful and legal tactics for dealing with local California Proud Boys and other fascist infestations will be available soon on our Red Star Report website at redstarreport.com on the Activism in Action page. You can also direct inquiries and, of course, the inevitable misspelled hate mail to Shankar's email address at shankarsingham at redstarreport.com. Good times. One of the things Red Star Report likes to remind everyone about is that even in the constant Washington, D.C.-centered media drumbeat of U.S. national news, movements for independence are actually a global reality. As Californians, it's a little too easy to forget that the desire for that freedom of self-rule didn't begin in 1776, as it shouldn't end for Californians in 1850. For the California independence movement, these international independence movements provide everything from warnings to hope. And arguably, after centuries of work, one of the most inspirational movements for independence has to be happening in Scotland today. So, to keep us up to date on what's happening with the Scottish independence movement, Red Star Report will be offering periodic update segments with the Saltire Report, hosted by Aeonghus Brownlee. Red Star Rebels, we go to Edinburgh.
Thank you, Hal. Happy New Year, Red Star Rebels, and to all in the Scottish diaspora, I hope you've had a bro burns night. I'm Aeonghus Brownlee, this is the Saltire Report. We're nearly a full month into 2023, and already we've witnessed perhaps the biggest news story of the year in Scottish politics. An event of grave importance regarding the equality of our nation and the very future of democracy in Scotland. I'm talking about the UK government blocking the Gender Recognition Reform Scotland Bill. So for context, at its core, the bill's purpose was to update and simplify the existing application process for getting a gender recognition certificate, allowing trans individuals to legally change the gender on their passport, birth certificate, driver's license, etc. The changes proposed in the bill would have made the lives of trans people living in Scotland just that little bit easier, and bring Scotland in line with international best practice. The Scottish Government started the process of reforming gender recognition back in 2017. The 5 main political parties all pledged their support to reform the Gender Recognition Act during the 2021 election campaign. And with 2 public consultations, years of expert evidence given to parliamentary committees, and 154 amendments proposed over 3 days of parliamentary debate, the GRR bill is one of the most worked on and scrutinised pieces of legislation in the 24-year history of the Scottish Parliament. On the 22nd of December last year, the Gender Recognition Reform Scotland Bill was passed with cross-party support.
The result of the vote on motion 7312 in the name of Shona Robison is yes 86, no 39. There were no abstentions. The motion is therefore agreed and the Gender Recognition Reform Scotland Bill is passed.
Shortly after the bill was passed, however, the Secretary of State for Scotland, Alister Jack, voiced his concerns with the bill, specifically its potential impact on the operation of the Equality Act, a reserved matter. So on the 16th of January, the Scottish Secretary confirmed he would, for the first time in the history of devolution, be triggering Section 35 of the Scotland Act, blocking the bill from gaining royal assent. Now this unprecedented move quickly drew criticism from politicians of all the main political parties in Scotland, LGBTQ plus non-profits across the UK, and key political figures out with Scotland, including the First Minister of Wales.
On the biggest question of all, I do agree with the leader of Plaid Cymru. I think the UK government's decision to use powers that have never been used in the whole history of devolution is a very dangerous moment. And I agree with the First Minister of Scotland that this could be a very slippery slope indeed.
In fact, one of the Scottish Secretary's most outspoken critics over the last few weeks has been the Scottish Conservatives' own Justice spokesperson, Jamie Green, one of the only 3 Tories who voted in favour of the bill and has spoken passionately about the need for these reforms. But undeterred by these interventions, on the 17th of January, the Scottish Secretary gave a ministerial statement to the House of Commons, followed by a few hours of debate. The Section 35 order then came to a parliamentary vote for approval, and of course it passed. 318 ayes to 71 noes, meaning that the bill, for now, cannot receive royal assent. And while nearly every other party chose to vote against the Section 35 order, the Labour Party, the official opposition to the government and often called the party of devolution, abstained from the vote, including the Shadow Secretary of State for Scotland, Ian Murray, the only Labour MP representing a Scottish constituency. Though 11 Labour MPs representing English and Welsh constituencies broke ranks with their party leadership, choosing instead to stand with the trans community, their colleagues in the Scottish Parliament, and showing respect for the devolved institutions. Keir Starmer, the leader of the UK Labour Party, appeared on the BBC's Sunday with Laura Kuenssberg days before the vote, where he voiced his own concerns about the bill. Among them, his opinion that 16 years old is too young an age for anyone to choose to officially change their gender. Now, in Scotland, you become a legal adult at the age of 16 years old, as opposed to 18 in England. At 16, you can choose to marry, lawfully consent to sex, vote and stand for election in Scottish parliamentary and local government elections, and you can even join the British military. This has been the case for many years. Scottish Labour leader Anna Sarwar, who failed to even so much as send out a tweet about the vote for a whole 24 hours, is now parroting Ian Murray, saying that while he believes that a Section 35 order should never have been given, he has justified Labour MPs being asked not to vote against blocking the bill because Labour does not want to get involved in a constitutional fight. Pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. So now Labour are calling on the Scottish Government to work with Alister Jack to find ways of addressing the UK Government's so-called legitimate concerns, a Conservative line that Labour are now parroting during its media rounds. But as Scottish Liberal Democrat leader Alex Cole-Hamilton explained on BBC Scotland, there is no compromise that can be made without gutting the bill of its core contents.
Russell Finlay says that he wants to bring the Scottish Government to the table so they can have a dialogue about how the bill can be improved and worked through. But if you look at the reasons, there is no way in which this bill can be amended to the satisfaction of the UK Government. They've said that you can't have two systems for obtaining a GRC operating separately.
Labour's response to the Section 45 order has been nothing short of a cowardly betrayal of its LGBTQ+ members and supporters across the UK. A betrayal of their colleagues in the Scottish Parliament, particularly Monica Lennon and Pam Duncan-Glancy, key supporters of the bill. A betrayal of the trans community in Scotland and across Britain. And a betrayal of the very institution their party played such a key role in creating in 1998.
I'm sure the United Kingdom's first ever female First Minister is enjoying the lecture from the Secretary of State and the various Cicero tribute acts behind them on feminism and the protection of women's rights. Isn't it the case, Mr Deputy Speaker, that what we have here is a decaying government in its last months in office, needing some red meat for its base, an utterly supine Labour Party trying to triangulate through all of this, meanwhile trans people are the collateral damage?
And for those of us who still passionately believe in Scottish democracy, we must continue to oppose and fight the Section 45 order. We cannot allow the Tories to get away with blocking the GRR bill. To do so would embolden ministers in future to block Scottish legislation they disagree with, whether for ideological reasons or for their own electoral prospects, just as the Tories are trying to do now. And if they succeed, it will be just another recent step towards the end of devolution in favour of absolute Westminster rule.
And on that issue of democracy, let's reflect, because on Monday the UK Government introduced legislation to ban the right to strike against the express wishes of the Scottish Government. On Tuesday they introduced legislation to overturn the GRR against the express wishes of the Scottish Government. And this evening they will seek to put in place legislation that rips up thousands of EU protections against the express wishes of the Scottish Government. Are we not now on a slippery slope from devolution to direct rule?
But for Scotland, this whole saga has highlighted once again a simple truth that we all in the Scottish independence movement have known and argued for years now. That the only way to ensure our Parliament is respected and is able to deliver a fairer, more equal nation for all the people of Scotland, that will only be possible through independence. With the SNP's special democracy conference happening on the 19th of March and the UK parliamentary elections still over a year away, I want to take this downtime to talk about the Building a New Scotland series of white papers, and I've got some interviews with Scottish independence activists lined up. Some more good stuff is coming your way, Red Star Rebels. Tapaliv Ersin Coed, and Hia Gudyan.
Thank you, Angus. I guess it should come as no surprise that ultra-conservatives are ultra-conservatives no matter where you go, with the fundamental principles of basic human rights always up for debate through the filters of their moral comfort zones. A perfect illustration that the reasoning behind the desire for independence and self-rule globally does stem from the very human need for civil rights protections. Red Star Rebels, for more information on Scottish independence, check out the Scottish National Party website at www.snp.org. That's www.snp.org. And for more Saltire Report segments on Red Star Report, be sure to give us a like and subscribe. We do appreciate it.
I may not be here with the mission to increase profits for corporations. That is true. My mission here is for the well-being and dignity of our family and our planet's future, for our children's ability to live on this planet. By around 2050, we are looking at the western states to be projected to further increase, wildfires to further increase 2 to 6 times. And that is just scratching the surface.
All right. First show back, 2023, episode 1. It just wouldn't be the same without talking points. this is Talking Points. So, did anybody else get the email from the offices of Nancy Pelosi where she promises to fight on for abortion rights if people just send her $15? Which is obviously leading into tonight's talking point question. Why do we need independence if we can just work to get or keep Democrats in power? Look, I know Nancy Pelosi's email is your typical modern email boilerplate campaign contribution fundraising tool requests sent out to the Democratic Party universe at regular intervals. And before anyone gets upset, yeah, I know the Republican Party does it too, 'cause politics. But really, isn't she already rich enough from her donor base and massive political war chest to not need my sad little $15 donation? No? I mean, did she not basically just hand over the U.S. congressional gavel to that fascist Republican Bakersfield Village idiot Kevin McCarthy, making it very doubtful any Roe versus Wade effort could even get a vote in the next 2 years? Particularly aggravating considering she was House Speaker with a Democratic majority in both houses and a Democrat in the White House. She had to know the Christian right had Roe v. Wade on the chopping block in the Supreme Court and still did nothing to set abortion rights in legal stone with federal legislation. Just like she didn't do with so many other issues when she actually had the power to do so. So why do we need independence if we can just work to get or keep Democrats in power? The California Independence Movement Handbook answer goes like this. Why would we? It hasn't really worked out very well for us in the past, has it? Would forgetting about independence and just focusing on electing Democrats get Californians fair representation in the Senate, give Californians a fair share of federal spending and mass deportations? Return government land, stop the wars, stop offshore drilling, ensure LGBTQ rights, fix gun laws, restore voting rights, end the housing shortage, reduce income inequality, stop police violence, grant women equal pay and the right to choose what's best for their own bodies, help veterans, stop fracking, create jobs, restore net neutrality, etc., 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 etc. In other words, all the things the federal government in general fails to get done for Californians decade after decade after decade, regardless of who's in power. Democrats at the federal level want your vote. They want your money and to maintain the status quo, but don't really seem to care any more about California or Californians' progressive values than the Republicans do. But that's the handbook answer, and it still basically rings true. Because let's face it, at the federal level, all Democrats seem to really be interested in is keeping political arguments going to keep those donor donations flowing. So nothing can really happen except small, incremental changes and some symbolic gestures that make for good television interviews, but effectively make for terrible government. So, again, why do we need independence if we can just work to get and keep the Democrats in power? Well, the same Nancy Pelosi whose campaign has the gall to ask long-suffering Californians for donations when she should be on the verge of retirement is the same Nancy Pelosi who seems to have redefined the term liberal to mean that she's generally okay with people wanting their basic human and civil rights as long as they don't want peace, environmental regulation, or universal health care, gun control, etc., 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 etc. Again, you know, all the things that recent votes and ongoing polling show that progressive Californians overwhelmingly want, but the Democratic Party in Washington, D.C., with its illusion of centrism and large corporate donors, simply cannot or will not act on. The trickle-down effect of this is that California State House Democrats also live and work under these same federal paradigms. Because California State House Democrats know that to get that big corporate donor payday, they need to sell out their constituents and move up in any way they can to become federal government Democrats. So, independence not only removes all threat of regressive federal legislation from politicians elected in states openly hostile to the best interests of California, California independence also removes the incentive for California politicians to run for U.S. federal office instead of focusing on the needs and demands of California and Californians. So, why do we need independence if we can just work to get and keep Democrats in power? Answer: because California independence has the best chance to keep our nation's state politicians local, accessible, focused, and without America's corporate donors, maybe even honest. This is Talking Points. That's it for this episode, podcast number 1 of our 3rd season. For more Red Star Report information, check out our website at www.redstarreport.com. Subscribe to our Red Star Report YouTube channel. Go to our Red Star Report Facebook page, Twitter, and Instagram, and give us a like and a follow. Because if you want to support the real California Independence Movement Media Group, it's all about the algorithms. Our thanks to you, our Red Star Rebels, for watching. We are Red Star Report.